Well, welcome everybody to the first Straight Talk with myself and Mel. Mel,
Hey, everybody.
this is going to
How's it
be no,
going?
this show is going to be about no judgment, real talk about real life issues that involve all of us from my point of view and her point of view as a counselor. Hey, Spencer. So anybody's welcome to ask questions. Um, Ideals or any you need any help or you feel like you have something you want to say, you're always going to be welcome to speak your mind and just let us know in the chat what you're thinking. Hey nephew, thanks for coming out and support everybody. All right, so tonight's or today's topic is fair fighting in relationships. Hey Meg, James, so fair fighting comes in different forms and shapes for different people, but you have to learn how to keep a relationship going. And if you're dirty fighting one or the other or both, usually tears it up. It's toxic. Am I right, Mel?
Oh, toxic. Toxic is as toxic does. Look at this chat. Oh, let me just first say a shout out. I see Victoria. I see MMC. MMC shout out was the first in the chat. I see Motivated. I see Spencer and Cecilian and Sin and Meg and Little James and Jody, and forgive me if I don't keep shouting them out, but just want to say welcome to this first episode of Straight Talk with Laurie and Mel. Laurie had this idea, and I just can't say how excited I am to be here. And some of you may think, this voice sounds a little familiar. I may be a little confused, or is it deja vu? Some of you may also know me as always watching. So, yep, it's me. It's Mel Song. It's the one and only. Always watching. Yep, you're not confused. And Lori had this awesome idea. Hey, what do these two gals who have been around the world a couple of times, around the sun a few times, with relationships, marriages, divorces, kids, grandkids, stepkids, whatever else in the world, what do we do? What do we talk about? What do we talk about? Life. And then you throw in, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Yep, I happen to have done a few years, maybe like over 3 decades of being a counselor, mental health and substance abuse. Don't hold it against me, folks.
So
So
it's nice you're telling him you're actual a trained, you're retired, but you are a trained professional. And being around
I
the world has been
I
true because I've been overseas and everything too.
I
So,
know. Let's give it up for Lori. I mean, we're talking
and you.
Army vet, Army wife, Army life, and I'm the daughter of a 22-year retired Army vet. May he rest in peace at our local national cemetery. Vietnam vet as well, Command Sergeant Major. I'm also in relationship with a Navy vet, a corpsman, who, if you know the term devil doc, you know that he was embedded with the Marines. So I've kind of got that whole military vibe going on in my life too. So this is why Lori and Tim and I started to kind of vibe. And then you get the thing of us being women, and you get this whole thing of mental health, substance abuse. You get this whole thing of I'm also crazy as a loon, and that's kind of a prerequisite to going into mental health.
And don't
So
forget, we're neither one shy to talk. We know about cars and everything
that's
in between, from cars to
that's
sex and everything in between.
that's right. Cars, sex. I mean, that's where we kind of got our start, right, Lori?
Yes,
On
it
your
sure
on your
was.
on your late night. Hey, Jacksonville Joe, little
And Holly
Jeffrey,
too.
Holly. Oh, look who's coming in. Mike's car hole. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm doing a
I'm
blush,
honored and
and
blessed that they're here to support us on our first show.
I am too. I mean, Spencer, all these folks. I'm blushing, and my dogs are barking.
Well, you saw
So
mine hiding in the background, so anytime he
yeah,
barks, please forgive. So,
forgive me for the dog. Forgive me for the dogs barking. They're cheering us on, okay? In Jacksonville, Joe, I've even taught one of my dogs to bark at Duval's. But anyway, the one disclaimer I do want to say here is I am a retired mental health counselor, okay? Tired and retired. So none of the things that I say are in lieu of professional licensed advice from a currently licensed mental health counselor or mental health professional. So, just want to stick that out there because don't want anybody going around saying, "Well, Mel said,"
yeah,
you know, with what Mel said and $5 or $6, you can get an expensive cup of coffee somewhere.
this is just straight talking, real facts from your past as a. I mean, we got it. We're going to be touching from fair fighting, um, tools to help spice up relationships. We're going to be talking about addictions, from sex addiction to any kind of alcohol or drug. We also got, oh, there's so many other topics we talked
Oh
about that
yeah,
just went blank
Va-
for a second. Domestic violence.
Valentine's
Yep.
Valentine's Day coming up. Our next show on February 8th. Maybe we'll talk about the love languages.
Yep.
And
So,
the other thing, folks, let's face it, relationships, right? Relationships between people. You don't want me to sing, okay? Even though my name starts with Mill, you don't want me to sing. When we talk about relationships, it doesn't just have to be between husband wife or
nope.
partner or same-sex partner. It could be between parent
Friends.
child, friends, neighbors, people with adult children. It could be between people that you're not even really fond of. So it could be people on the YouTube streets. So we might sort of reference relationships because that's just sort of where we're heading. But just kind of keep in mind, and even in chat, um, you have questions, you have comments. This is interactive, okay? This is not just sister to sister here. This is sister to brother to sister to chat.
Yep.
So drop those comments in chat. We may get to the point where we can open up the panel and just let us know what you're thinking. Let us know if we're on course, off course, of course. And so, like Laurie was saying, fair fighting. I don't know if you guys even had ever thought about this before. What do you think? Did you think that you could have a fair fight or a fair argument? Is that something you've ever
Well,
heard of?
I don't think I ever did until you get into a marriage and you have to relate, and one or both start doing dirty stuff in it, when you're young. And it's I learned from after a divorce that if you carry that kind of technique, you're doomed to repeat the same factors over and over again. So I had to learn for myself what I would accept in a fight, what I won't. And for me, you never throw up the word divorce. If you throw that divorce in, or I'm leaving, or you could leave, that you've already just put that first fear into your partner's heart that that's a possibility. So that doubt's going to already start creeping up every time there's a fight. So they're going to be afraid to fight. And you've got to fight. Fighting is healthy.
Lori, did you read my notes? Have you been peeking?
Nope, just life experience.
You this is why this is going to be so great because you just like hit the number one thing of this whole thing. An East Side, hey there, Nikki. Oh, my friend from over the pond. Hey, I mean that's like the one of the number ones is when you start throwing out these threats of like I'm leaving, or it's time for a divorce, or anything like that. I mean, what faster way to shut down a conversation, right? Like
Yep.
who wants to talk after that? Kind of the
Yeah.
ultimate pretty much the ultimate ultimatum.
Yep.
I mean, somebody hits you with that, like that's like a bucket of cold water. How much more unworthwhile can you feel?
Yeah.
So yeah, as soon as you've done that, that's kind of like, well, discussion over. Bam, there I go out the door. What more is there to talk about?
Yeah, you shut down. You feel like if I say another word, then that's the moment they're going to leave you or it's over. And, a lot of people feel stifled that they can't. And, the resentment just builds up and that's where the next fight comes from. And then they'll throw in your face, I thought we resolved this. No, we didn't. You threatened. And now it's still going to stay there and fester and it's going to make it worse. And eventually it will give them exactly what they threatened without meaning to.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and then you get the phenomenon of like immediate shutdown. Like I used to call it when I would be counseling a couple, I'd call it like the Pac-Man syndrome. Anybody remember playing Pac-Man? You remember how Pac-Man would chase the other one would chase the other one?
Yep.
Um, and I was the typical Pac-Man chasing. Okay, I was the one that was like, I want to talk, I want to talk, I want to talk, I want to talk, I want to talk. Can anybody in chat relate to that? Oh God, I'd be, I want to talk, I want to talk, and of course my husband would be the one running. Later, I'm out of here. I don't want to talk right now. I don't want to talk right now. And of course, what happens when somebody doesn't want to talk and the other one wants to talk? It's like it's on like Donkey Kong.
Yep.
It, he's running, I'm chasing, and he shuts down, and I'm like, the more I want to talk, the more he shuts down. Nothing happens. And then
And the
if you
more
get
you feel
somebody,
neglected and like he's not caring about you, that he's not interested in what you have to say. So that builds up another set of resentments right there, too.
oh, you know it. It's like you don't listen to me, and then he's like, well, all you want to do is talk, and oh my god, it's like crazy. And Mike's Carhold, exactly. Like there you go. When you have a disagreement, to kind of separate for a little while, not like legally separate, but to
Like
kind of
different
go
room.
corners for a little while till things have cooled down, and then to come back together and talk at a later time. Now there's the key too, because often what happens is somebody will just walk away. So if you just walk away, then what happens is that leaves the other person just hanging. And it doesn't matter if it's the man or the woman, because I get what MMC's saying. Guys can only usually take so much before they have to kind of just leave and process and digest. It's like, whoa, I can only take so much. Although I've known that there can be people of both sexes who are just like, overload, morning, 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 Will Robinson, got to digest this. But here's the deal: how does it leave somebody feeling if somebody just turns around and walks away?
Well, I'm one of those that if I'm angry or I'm hurt, I had to learn, I've learned after 26 years, but I want to settle it right then and there. You did it to me or you misunderstood and think I did something or you did something. And I want to either prove it that I didn't or that you did. I have to know right now, right now. And he'd be like, I'm walking away. I'll talk about this later. But for him later, it seems like in the beginning, I would notice that he would forget. And because we weren't talking and we weren't fighting anymore, it was done. He thought it was settled. And it would
Right.
be like, no, it's not. So for me, I had to learn I have to lower the temperature. Being an Italian, I had to lower the temperature, try to come with him. And when he'd say, give me a minute, I would let him have a few minutes. But then I want to go and I want to approach it differently, calmly, and get him to talk.
Yeah.
but men don't process like we do, and that's hard for people to get to, even myself. You have to remember that men process what we're saying differently than how we process what they're saying.
Right.
And that's another form of fair fighting. You've got to try to put yourself in that other person's shoes, and that's hard. It is hard to do, and everybody's guilty of not doing that, especially in the beginning.
Oh
So
yeah, we don't listen to listen. Lots of times people, and I'm going to put myself there, we just hear, we don't
yeah.
listen. And you and Victoria were kind of saying the same thing. It's hard when there's an issue and one person wants to talk about and the other one doesn't, and we kind of want to figure out what's happened. And Sin, I like that. You and your wife don't fight, you smoke a blunt and talk through it. It's the idea though is you talk through it. And the thing is this whole thing about fair fighting. It's one of the big keys is not only not walking away but coming back at some point. If you do walk away, the first key is you say, okay, I need a break, but I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about it. And usually you decide, okay, how long of a break is going to be? Give me 30 minutes, give me an hour, give me a day. Doesn't matter how long. It's that you communicate to the other person that you need a break, and you set a time limit so the other person isn't just hanging out there on the line to dry. And after a while, when you've been with a person for a while, you kind of you get to know how long that break's going to be. Like Mike Carhol's saying, sometimes I need a few days. Sometimes maybe the other thing is maybe there's a lot that's going on, and it's not even just that thing. I just need some days to kind of chill. And maybe it's serious, maybe it's not that serious, and I realize I overreacted. The key is to communicate. uh, we need a few days. I like that, Meg. We've learned to walk away for a few, and then we'll talk, make fun, smoke, and make up. Isn't the making up part fun?
Yes, no matter how long you've been together, trust me, making up still stays is fun.
Making up.
And another topic too, another interesting fact about what you're saying, Mel, is too, is when we're fighting, you can't fight. Your fight can't be to prove you're right and they're wrong. And sometimes that's why another partner has to walk away, because they feel attacked and not. Uh, um, I don't even know how to put it into the words, but I'll let you explain as the counselor.
No, you explain as the person who's been through there. This is both of us, girlfriend.
I guess for me, if I'm told, like, well, I didn't do this and I know you did, I'm gonna, like, hold on a minute, and I'm gonna try to find where he did it and recall that situation. Not per se me and Tim, but this is another reason, a marriage breaks apart, because one or both are guilty of it. So fighting, not only do you have to learn what each other needs, whether one has to, you both have to say what you got to say, or one has to walk away. So you both agree to walk away and come back at a later time, but don't sweep it under a rug. You can't fight to prove the other one is wrong and wronged you. You just got to explain and try to get your point across how you feel you were wronged and why you feel that way, but not as an attack, because that leads to another unfair tactic in fighting, is always making that other person feel less than you.
Yes, yes. And I swear to goodness, folks, I think she somehow read my notes. I, I don't know how, because she's like in another time zone, but this is just how she and I are like going to be bouncing off of each other. So, I hope you guys are going to keep coming back for this kind of content, because this is where the fun comes in. I'm telling you. Yeah, there's a saying about, would you rather be right or would you rather be kind? And I know sometimes being right is important because it may have to do with safety, like either physical or emotional safety. But sometimes being right isn't always going to be important. And I don't know how people in the chat feels about that. But sometimes it's not all about being right. Sometimes it's about being not only us being heard, but it's about the other person being heard. And sometimes it's just about knowing that you've been able to communicate with each other. You know, communication has two sides. And this was a huge, huge thing that when not only in working with other people, but in my own relationships, and people are going to say, well, you're a counselor and you were married and divorced twice. And I'm going to say, yeah, life
Yep.
happens. Counselors are not immune from real life. Okay.
Well,
You know,
touch
it's
on that for a minute. Be real, because
yeah, yeah,
you're able, everybody's able to judge other people's, see what's wrong with other people. Sometimes it's hard to look inward and see what's wrong with ourselves.
yeah. And the reality is, and my example used to be, like, well, dentists get cavities and doctors get sick. So why should a mental health counselor not have real life stuff happen, people, like when I met my first husband, I was 15. We dated for 5 years before we got married. People grow up a lot and sometimes can grow apart. And honestly, he was the first love of my life, and he'll always be the love of my life. Our marriage ended because I had a miscarriage that was extremely traumatic for me, and I couldn't get back to that point in my head for having kids. And we I went to counseling. He wouldn't go. I went to counseling. I later came to understand that that was really selfish, but that's just where I was in my 20s. I couldn't get past it, and unfortunately it ended our marriage. And you know, he, he went on and met somebody and they had a daughter, and it is what it is. Um Life happens in funny ways. I went on and met someone who had two children, and I guess I kind of wound up with children, as a stepmother. Unfortunately, that relationship ended, for other reasons. He was 10 years older, and I think maybe it was a rebound relationship. So stuff happens. But I think what's important in a relationship is learning to communicate. And communication has two parts. It's more than just speaking. The other part is listening. And listening is so different than hearing. Hearing is the physical act of taking in sound vibrations. Listening is really about hearing the other person's message so that you can kind of paraphrase and repeat back to them and get what they're saying. And when we're fair fighting, we have to stop talking long enough to try to really see, am I hearing what the other person's saying? Am I really listening? I love this thing that we're given two eyes, two ears, and one mouth for a reason. We should be listening, and we should be looking twice as much as we're talking. And I think in relationships, that's really important, even with our kids and our neighbors and our friends. Are we really listening to what they're saying? And like Lori, like you were saying, sometimes it's not about being right. It's about, are you and Tim sitting down and just, are you listening to each other? Are you trying to figure out where the other one's coming from?
Yep.
And
Because
Nikki,
attacking is easy. Attacking and trying to defend your position over the others, that's just reflex. It's reprogramming yourself, even, because it's called compromise in fighting. That's a tool. You have to learn to compromise and hear the other person, no matter, even if you know you're right, but they might have thought they were right, and you've just got to try to figure out that middle, that, instead of just always giving in and accepting, or just letting the other person be right all the time, that just wears on you too and builds up a resentment inside of you as well.
huge, big time. It's about negotiation, compromise. And Nikki, you're so right. You can't control the other people, the other person's behavior. There's something we talk about called locus of control. And more people in this world get depressed and anxious over things they can't control. We can't control what other people say, what they do, what they don't say, what they don't do. We can't control traffic, the weather, politics, the economy. The only things we can control are what we think, we say, we feel, we do. That's it. And sometimes I have trouble controlling what I say and what I do.
Hey, YouTube's the perfect place to admit, how fast you get quick to anger and say stuff that you normally would not say, and changes how people look at you. And yeah, so it, that happens in relationships in all, whether it's somebody you've never met and you're just talking through a keyboard, to your best friend, to a neighbor, to a loved one, a family member. Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's that hard for me, I'll say me, but probably for if it's that hard for any of us to control how we say and think and feel, then you can see how it blows up on YouTube or how it blows up on Facebook or other things because it's so hard to control. And Mike's Carhole, you're right. Self-reflection is hard to do. It's hard to look at ourselves in the mirror. It's hard to look inward. It's hard to admit to ourselves, let alone to somebody else, uh-oh, I mucked up, or
Yeah.
uh-oh, this is an ugly truth about myself. But, here's the beautiful thing. When we can do that in a relationship, when we can admit our faults to ourselves, and like MMC just said, the hardest part is saying I was wrong, I apologize, and then to really mean it. But when we can do that, let me tell you something. You're forging a part of that relationship that's like forged in steel. It's like in iron. It's it
That's like forged in.
it's like becoming it's something that's stronger than the relationship itself because now that's where you're showing to that person, I value you, I value myself, and I value what we have. And that can go a long way in a relationship.
Yes, Iron Horses is always watching on the panel. Her real name is Mel.
Yes, Iron Horse, it's me.
I've known all along, but that was her incognito, so that people didn't know who she was at that time. So she finally came out, per se.
Dan, you're making me laugh. You know you're always right, so feelings always get hurt. Yeah, well.
And see, he's single. Well, he's not single now, but he has been single for a while, so that we could tease him and troll him. He's easy. So him and HBR, just get him.
Oh, HBR, I doubt that mirror breaks. I seriously doubt that mirror breaks. So, yeah, it's you know, when we look at ourselves and when we look at relationships, it can be painful. But here's my other deep philosophy. I know I'm getting in so deep in philosophy, y'all are gonna have to
That's
put
what
your
this is. That's
you're
straight
gonna have
talking.
to, yeah, you're gonna have to put your waiter boots on when you come to Straight Talk with Laurie and Mel. Um, the thing is I believe that our greatest strengths are also our Achilles heel. They're also our greatest weaknesses. Like when we care so much, we're also the ones who tend to get hurt the easiest, because when you have a big heart, that big heart can be a target for a lot of pain. But I learned that because there was a point, I got a huge heart. I got a big heart. I think maybe that's why I went into counseling because I had a big heart. I had a successful father, but he also came back from Vietnam and his drinking got worse. So I think that was part of what led me into counseling and substance abuse. But when you got a big heart, it's also you're a big target. But what's the consequences of me shutting down that big heart? Then that means it's going to be harder for me to love people and for people to love me. Well, I'm not willing to risk that. And so I would suggest to people that even when somebody's, who was that guy? Somebody out there will know who was that author that wrote, somebody, I don't know, they pulled his heart out and stumped that sucker flat. Who was that author? Who was that comedian author? I can't think of his name right now. But when somebody pulls out your heart and stomps that sucker flat, you got a choice. You you either work to keep your heart beating or you turn cold. And I'm just not willing to turn cold. I can't. I just can't. I don't want to be one of those people, you know?
And another thing too, people got to look at is sometimes anger is related to other topics, which we would get into it. But for men, I've noticed that sometimes anger is actually, from what I've learned from experience, is a form of depression. So that's another form of fair fighting, is you've got to realize is where's that anger coming from? Where is the attack coming from? Is it really directed at you, or is it, um, if you can realize and step back and try to find out where the other partner, male or female, where their anger is coming from, ask them, did you have a bad day at work? Did something happen to you? Did the kids do this? Or that's another way to open up to get a fair fight. And sometimes maybe a tool to cool it down is finding out the root of where the anger came from.
Yep, yep. And MMC, you're right. We've been warned about, when our hearts grow hard and cold. And yes, anger, there's a saying that anger is depression turned uh can be turned outward, or that depression is anger turned inward. And
Yeah.
anger can sometimes be an expression of fear. It can be an expression of depression or anxiety. Anger itself, believe it or not, is not a bad emotion. There's
Nope.
times when anger is really, really appropriate. Anger can, when anger is used right and not as a weapon against somebody, anger can be powerful. Anger can be a motivator. If I get angry enough about a social cause, or if I get angry enough that somebody's trying to do me or my family wrong, it's going to motivate me to do something. If I get angry enough, for example, I'm a two-time breast cancer survivor. I know some of the people out there, like motivated one legger and some of the rest. You get angry that you're in a certain situation about your health. Well, you know what? You can either give into it, or you can use that anger and say, I'm going to rise up and I'm going to deal with this. So anger can be powerful when it's used the right way.
And Mel,
Um,
on that subject, there are a couple amputees who did, including Motivator, who said they would that as a topic for one of us to express how they feel and stuff like that for another topic, not
oh,
to get
that would
off
be
topic.
No, that would be wonderful, and that's not off topic. That would be wonderful, and they could school us and get up on panel and let us know how they've handled things, and that would be some perfect straight talk. And
Yep.
HBR, yes, absolutely. Physical pain can cause people to lash out. And oh, HBR, that brings up something perfect too when you're talking about fair fighting. I don't know about any of you, but have you ever been involved in an argument where you forgot what you were originally arguing about?
Oh God, all the time, and you have to stop, and they won't tell you. But in a fair fight, they should, if they're willing. They don't. You've got to be able to help each other, and that's that fair fighting. Let the other person where they left off. I hate when somebody says, "Oh, I wasn't listening," or "I don't remember." How could you not remember? I just I was just talking.
Yeah, and like Meg and HBR and all are saying, is that sometimes, you know, people forget that there might be other reasons why an argument is escalating. It could be pain. It could be fatigue. It could be, um, you know, like HBR is saying, I get angry, got angry when I was hurt and I was no longer able to work. Sometimes that can creep into other conversations. And or it could be that, we don't even realize we're having a conversation, and maybe we don't even realize how we're feeling about other things, but we realize we're starting to get irritable, and we're starting to let that creep into our conversation, and before we know it, we're lashing out at the person we're talking to.
Yep.
So, it's we have to sometimes step back and think, like, wait a minute, what were we even talking about? The argument was, and sometimes arguments or discussions can start over the smallest things. They're not even like life or death consequences. It's like, do you want chicken or fish for dinner?
Yep.
Have any of you had those kinds of like discussions that started with something really tiny?
Asked Tim and ours still do it. Like, babe, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. You decide. No, you pick. Can you make up your mind? Little stuff like that. But it still leads back to something that maybe happened at work, or one of us had a bad day, and that just something as small as asking about what you want for dinner can trigger a fight.
Yep, yep. Iron. Oh, you bring up another good one about, that affects fair fighting. This is another big rule for fair fighting. When when something has been settled, or maybe it hasn't been settled, but two people agree we need to leave that in the past, whether it's been settled or not. If there's a topic that has been settled, or if there's a topic that people haven't been able to settle but can at least come to the point of saying we need to agree to disagree and not bring this up again, then that needs to go up on the shelf and not come back. And that's one of the rules of fair fighting. Like I said, believe it or not, there's rules of fair fighting.
Yep.
um, and one of them is not to bring up the past. And and when that thing is brought up again, then that's a broken rule. And there are rules not to be broken, and you have to agree on these rules ahead of time. That's the other key. You can't just make them up on the fly. I literally
Yep.
would encourage couples to sit down. We had a I had a sheet of rules of fair fighting, and then I'd encourage them to make up some of their own. And there were some couples that came up with some really really cool things, and they even used some of these for other things. Like one couple, if one was in a particularly not so good mood that day, maybe they weren't feeling well due to pain or something else, or had a really bad day at work, it just wasn't a good day to get into anything deep. They had this little tchotchke that sat up on their mantle. It was actually a little elephant, and either one of them could turn the elephant backwards so its butt would be showing instead of the trunk. And so if the butt was showing, that was like no, not a good day for a discussion. Well, what got to be funny, it was also started to mean today's not a good today, or tonight's not a good sex day or night. So they kind of expanded its meaning, but it was so cool that they here was a totally innocent way for them to communicate with each other, that they just had this they didn't have to say a thing. Now, if it was like super important, or obviously like the house was going to burn down, then, they could talk. And they'd still talk to each other. It was just that they wouldn't get into any things or anything they'd fight about. Um, but yeah, you don't bring up the past, and you agree ahead of time on the things that you're not going to bring. Or each time you settle something, you
Right
agree,
there.
okay, that's going to go into the negotiable. We don't bring it up again. Another one is not yelling. Now, sometimes that gets a little tricky, but if it's loud enough that somebody standing outside your house could hear it, then that's a non-negotiable. You don't yell. Um, I don't
And
know.
you know
What
what
are some
another
other?
one is?
What's another one?
Always thinking the other person's cheating.
Oh yes.
When they're late home from work, or they did forgot to call you, or they didn't pick up their phone right away, or because there's always a million, or they're late, they said they'd be home at 5 and it's 5:15. Oh my god, there's
Yeah.
traffic, people. There's
Yeah.
late
Yep.
meetings, or there could be a thousand things. If he or she have never given you a reason to cheat, to suspect it, don't jump to it and throw it at them right off the bat. That's another dirty, unfair way that people fight.
And especially if you've been cheated on before, don't assume or presume that. Don't assign those characteristics to your next partner. And that's a real important discussion to have. One of the things I'm blessed with in my current relationship is that we talk about everything. In fact, we talked on the phone for hours for weeks, which I know is not everybody's cup of tea. It just kind of happened for us because
That's how we did.
he lives about an hour away from me, and we knew more about each other before the first time we met than most people probably know, like in the first 6 months of their relationship. And like nothing's off the table. And for those of you who know me from Laurie's late night, I did the like sex toy discussion, and we're both naturists, so we go to nude resorts and stuff. Something that I never thought I'd be doing in my 60s. Okay, I'm just going to throw that out there.
Mhm.
But and there may be some friends of mine who are listening to this, who are hearing this for the first time, going, "Oh my God, I never knew this about Mel." Well, Mel never knew this about Mel. Okay, so these are things that you know I've discovered about myself at this point in life, that and I'm loving life, and it's like, you know, why the heck not? I'm not going to get another life.
Can I
This is,
interrupt you for a minute, Mel? I'm sorry.
yeah.
Dan, sometimes we've noticed that in your settings, or Victoria, if you go into your Google settings and your YouTube settings, sometimes YouTube's been putting people in the blocked, and they're being blocked. And that's why people can't. Jen found out that I was blocked on her Google, on her phone, or the Google account, not YouTube. She could never see my comments. And then she went in and found it. Same with, we had with, uh, the weather guy. I can't even think of his name all of a sudden. I talk to him all the time. The Florida.
uh,
He was
Florida.
blocked. Yeah. So if Dan can't see your comments, somewhere in your settings he accidentally got blocked. So I just want to say, hey Creaker, hey Emily, thanks for coming in and supporting. All right, Mel, I am so sorry. I just saw people
Oh no,
can't see
no,
people's
no,
chats.
no. I'm glad you did that. Anyway, there are things I'm still finding about myself, and I think this goes along with fair fighting. As you go through life, I don't care if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I don't care if you're in your 90s. If you're not always learning things about yourself and discovering things about yourself and being open to learning, and the same goes for relationships, I think you're kind of missing out. So it's also the same when you're communicating in relationships. You have to be willing to evolve, and you have to be willing to kind of be open about things. He and I talked about so many things before we even met, and we still have that kind of communication. So it's really important. And I don't know about you, Lori. Would you say that you and Tim, would you say your communication has evolved over 26 years?
Do you know, I will say this, that you've heard of peaks and valleys, right? All relationships
Yeah.
have this up and down, and you have the smooth in betweens. In the beginning, we had a very great, because we did all the talking. He was stationed at Fort Riley, I was stationed at Fort Knox, so we did a lot of the talking over the phone. Old fashioned cassette tapes. We'd tape messages and mail them to each other when we were going to be apart for long times. um, but then we got, you get those peaks where the all of a sudden it's like communication, you're on two different planets. You just can't seem to jive up. And then you don't know why, but all of a sudden it just kicks back in. So it has evolved, but it's a constant evolving. It's never smooth, it's never perfect. Over 26 years, it's a constant. You've got to work on it to make sure that you put in that time and that work and evolve with the changes. And because you change daily and yearly as you get older, your bodies are changing, your thoughts. So it's a constant, just like that. Your conversation evolves and you've got to work on it.
See, that's the key. Nothing stays constant. There's that saying, the only thing constant is change. So
Yep.
relationships, no matter how long you've been with somebody, they change. And so when we're talking about the rules of fair fighting, we have to revisit them. We have to see what's working. We have to see what's not working. We have to see where maybe we've forgotten some of the rules. Maybe we need to add some rules. Maybe we've
Yep.
gotten away from, like, uh-oh, is somebody starting to raise their voice? Is somebody walking off in a huff and not coming back to talk things over? I know we got a lot of gearheads in the chat, and I love that. Does anybody like to go for a drive when they've gotten angry? I know,
I know a
probably
couple in
you know
there.
a
Yep.
couple. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And I can remember, people saying, "Well, when I get angry, I just get in my car and drive." Well, that's maybe not such a bad idea. But there is one little caution there, that just remember that you've now gotten behind the wheel of a 2 or 3 thousand pound weapon. So when you're out clearing your head, just kind of be careful there. Um, there's lots of things, and make sure that you come back to the person that you had the argument with, because you want to get that settled. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of ways rules can change. There's a lot of way couples change. There's a lot of way their communication changes. And there's a lot of ways people can say they're sorry, sometimes without using the words.
Yep.
That's the other thing that sometimes people don't pick up on. I have a friend whose husband adamantly refuses to say he's sorry, and that pisses her off. They've been together probably close to 30 years, and he's maybe uttered the words "I'm sorry" reluctantly, maybe 5 times in 30 years. But he does things like he'll go out and he'll be tinkering around the garage, or he'll do whatever, and they've maybe talked a little bit, but he still won't apologize. But then she'll go out and he's completely detailed her car,
Yep.
or
Goes
he's
out and get her a nice dinner so she doesn't have to cook that night.
or he's completely cleaned up the flower beds that he's kind of been putting off anyway, or he'll run her a nice bath or something, and she'll say, well, he never did say he was sorry.
But he
Uh,
did in his
he
way.
he did, yeah.
Yep.
So that kind of goes back to, maybe we can talk about those love languages next time, that while she's waiting for the sorry, he's already said it several times, but not in the
She's
language.
missing it. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yep.
sometimes we have to tune into people. It's like the kid who does something, and they never quite say sorry the way the parents wanting them to, but then they go out and they pick a handful of little weed flowers and bring them in,
Yep.
and that's their sorry. So sometimes we also have to look for those nonverbal things. um, Nonverbal language in fair fighting is important too. Is the person looking at you? Are they facing you when they're talking? Are they what are the nonverbal cues that they're giving you that tell you that they're a part of the conversation? So
Yep.
that's a part of it too. Some of you maybe have given or have received some "I'm sorries" that didn't use words.
Yep.
I don't know. Any of you have a favorite way of apologizing? I mean, we know there's the consummate one that people like to do for making up, but
But you know what? That's I want to in fair fighting. You can't use sex, and that's
no.
what a lot of people think, that sex is the cure all to end a fight. That's another way of dirty fighting, by undermining your partner's ability to say what they have to say, is by doing, they might enjoy it, but it still doesn't resolve that issue, and it's going to stay in that person's head or in their heart. It's still going to be heavy, because the next time something even similar, it's going to trigger what happened last time. And sex is used as an unfair fighting too, and is not a fair weapon in fighting.
Right. And same thing for withholding sex.
Yep.
Withholding sex that is not fair fighting. That creates more resentment, and it's not addressing the problem at hand.
Yep.
So yeah, that is one of the rules of fair fighting, is that you don't use sex as a weapon.
Yep.
That just causes more and more problems. And all too often, that is something that not just women do. I know a lot of men blame women for doing it, but
But they're guilty too.
they'll,
Yep.
they'll do it too. It'll be like, yeah, no nookie for you, and it's like, yeah, no, don't go there. Don't go there, because it's taking something that's natural and beautiful. Again, we're talking about men and women. It could be between same sex couples, whatever. But you're taking another aspect of the relationship and you're weaponizing it, and that's not good.
Exactly. And you
Not
don't throw up. Another thing about fair fighting is you don't throw up their being a mom or a woman, or go at their looks. And same with a man. You don't attack their manhood. You don't attack their ability to be a father, a husband, or a provider. There's just those are all un just they're just underhanded, dirty tactics that should, if you want a long-term relationship, a meaningful one, those are just tactics you don't use against one another.
No, no. I think when it resorts to attacking somebody's physical looks, attacking their ability to do something, um, again, especially sometimes with the economy, if somebody maybe has lost their job, or this goes back to physical abilities, or if somebody's gained weight, anything like that, that is not
Yeah.
fair fighting. No, no, no. You don't you just don't go there. That those are cheap shots.
Yeah.
And
Everybody ages, everybody's looks change, everybody will lose weight, put on a few pounds, lose a few pounds. Um, so in the relationship, you gotta, in the beginning, you were attracted by their outer looks. Nobody can say that, oh, I fell in love with their being. No, you didn't. You were attracted to how they looked. But that courting period of time before you get married is about the time you learn about the inside of a person. That's where you truly should fall in love with, is that person. So that way, every time you look at them 30 years from now, they're still that same sexy person or what you fell in love with, because it's the inner part that you fell in love with, not the outer,
that's right. The outer may have attracted you, but it's the inner
that
that you
keeps
were
you.
really drawn to, and that's what keeps you. And that's something else about fair fighting. When you want to walk away, or when you just can't take it anymore, one of the things to remember, and sometimes, and again, I'm kind of giving some tips and tricks of of some of the things I worked with couples on. I'd often give couples homework, and I'd say, write down maybe the top 5 things that you fell in love with this person about. Not their physical characteristics, but the top 5 things that you love about this person. And I'd
Yep.
even have parents and children do this in families counseling, or parents and teens. What is it about this person that you love? And they couldn't list any physical characteristics. And and sometimes it would be like little things, like, I love your chocolate pie. I love the chocolate pie you make for me. Or I love the way you rub my back to help me fall asleep, or whatever. Or I love that you're kind to animals, or it could be anything. But when you're fighting or arguing, or when you feel like, this person and you are at your worst, pull that list out. Type it into your phone if you need to, because everybody's on their phone these days, right?
Yep. Or
And
computers.
or computer, you know. And when you're feeling like, people are just at their worst, when you're at your worst, pull that list out. Just pull it out. And I gotta be careful when I say whip that
Yeah.
out. Uh,
That'll be another, that's another show.
it's a
So
whole nother
we'll get,
show.
yeah, we'll get to that show too, because it's educational. But yeah.
But pull that list out and really look at
Yep.
it and think on those things. And I don't care if it's your child, a family member, a neighbor, a friend. Think about those top 5 things that drew you to that person, and why you're grateful. Sin, you're cracking me up. You forgive anything for a blowjob. We get you. I know, but no, seriously. I mean, when you think about what it is that drew you to that person and what keeps you with that person in your life, why do you value that person in your life? I know why I value my best friend. I know why I value my neighbors. I know why I value my stepdaughters. I and I'll ask you to sometimes even start with people who are not you're not romantically involved with, because sometimes you can start with those lists and then work to the list of the people or the person that you're romantically involved with.
Yep.
And when you do that, all of a sudden life takes on a little bit of a different perspective.
It's like the problem was very small in the scheme of the whole picture.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
Isn't it though? Because then you go, okay, we had a fight about, you know, not taking out the garbage, or we had a fight about the fact that, you know, so and so was supposed to pick up the grandkids and it was his turn, but he didn't do it, so I had to go get him.
Yeah.
But, you know, okay, in the scheme of life, 5 weeks from now, 5 days from now, 5 hours from now, 5 years from now, how important is that going to be?
We got to
Caterpillar,
let the, go ahead with Caterpillar real quick.
Caterpillar, I love that. I love my Tom, and he's still sexy to me. And even though we can't have sex anymore, cancer took it away, he's still a sexy beast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because she fell in
Yes.
love with who he was as a man, as a person, as a human inside for his heart, not his body.
And Kata, you just brought up a whole nother episode that we can have. Oh my gosh, I love you for this. Because here's the other thing, sexy goes beyond sex, doesn't it? You guys are giving us so many ideas. I can't stand it. Y'all are just
So we can't give it away yet till we have
no,
that
no.
show.
But
But
but but but just a lovely group of people here today, because that's another episode. But there's more than one kind of intimacy, and sex
yeah.
is only one of about six kinds of intimacy.
And
And
another bad thing about fighting too is if you hate yourself or you hate that you did something, you can't take it out on that other person.
no,
They're not your punching bag because they want to date you or they're living with you or you're married to them or you're just in a relationship. They are not your whipping post. They're there for your support and for loving you and being there to have your back and you have theirs. So using people as a punching bag or as an outlet for your anger, that's not fair fighting either.
no, it's not. And again, it kind of goes back to, if you're mad at yourself for something, and this is a whole nother episode we can do, Lori, when it comes to relationships, and that's forgiveness, or just
Yeah.
life. There are some things in life that are pretty darn hard to forgive, and I think that the some of the hardest things that I've had to forgive has been forgiving myself for some things that other people have long ago forgiven me. But forgiveness sometimes of ourselves or others can stand in the way of fair fighting. It kind of goes
Yeah.
back with putting some of those things on the shelf. And I don't know how chat feels about that. We've talked about cheating and some other things. And sometimes you have to decide what you can move past and what you can't. And again, this is where you have to have these hard discussions ahead of time and make these decisions, and either not harbor the resentment and move on, or else just make your decisions to part ways, because you can't let these things hang over you.
No.
It's just important that when you fight fair, this is going to sound kind of trite, but you have to kind of come from a clean slate. You just can't have a bunch of stuff hanging over you every day. Dustin, you've got a good question. Can cousins be guardian angels? My answer to that would be yes. My answer
Anybody.
is probably anybody could be your guardian angel. I'm no expert on guardian angels, but Dustin, I'd say yes. And Sicilian, inner beauty to me trumps all. I think inner beauty is something that I don't know. It's kind of underrated.
And that's why
MMC.
there's so many divorces and so many breakups. And also, you can't another tactic for fair fighting is you can't always get the last word. You can't be the last word, the final say so in an argument.
Right. Sometimes you just kind of have to cede to the other person and go, okay, you
Yeah.
know, it, you know,
You
it,
don't have
it's
to
like,
agree, you
right.
don't have to like it, but sometimes that's that compromise for a fair fight. You can't
It,
always win.
yeah, it doesn't have to be winner, winner, chicken dinner. Sometimes you both kind of have to just agree to disagree, or you both just have to go, okay. All right.
Would
Till
you
next
agree
time.
that there shouldn't be a winner or a loser? You should both walk away feeling both sides were heard and resolved to, even if it's just to agree to disagree, but not hold that resentment in.
Yeah, it's like it's been dealt with. I've dealt it. I've smelt it. I've put it. I've put it away. It's like, okay, there you go. MMC, you just gave. Oh my gosh, you're gonna make me cry.
That's why I posted it up there because, yeah.
You're gonna make me cry. Oh my gosh, MMC. This is what Lori and I want to achieve with this is that I think with all the negativity in this world and and before I kind of got reintroduced to YouTube last year, my time on YouTube had been like watching animal videos, DIY videos, RV camping videos, and stuff like that. And then I kind of got pulled down true crime rabbit holes and stuff that involved my sweet dear friend's anime that I love dearly. And then I got introduced to Tim and Laurie, and we see where that led me,
To the
which I
late night brunch.
and to today, and I of course I love Tim and Laurie, and I love the late night crew, and everybody that I've met like MMC, and
It's an amazing community, isn't it? We got some
it
good
is.
people.
And
They're just,
MMC,
they're family.
he just validated that yes, everything we've overcome together and learning to work together as a team, and it's proof that there are good things and good people on YouTube. And oh my gosh, you just oh
But we
holy
do
cow.
get sucked into the dirty fighting too. We want to prove we're right, whether we're right or wrong. Not everybody wants the facts. Not everybody believes lies. So it's just you you end up hurting a group just to prove you're right or you're wrong. And we've all been dragged into it. I've only been on 6 months, and yeah, I mean, and if you let something go, it's supposed to be gone. It's never to be thrown back up in your face. But that's that part of that dirty fighting. You want to keep attacking people and trying to prove you're right by, bringing up facts that you supposedly let go. It's just like a relationship because it's still a YouTube relationship.
Yeah,
You
but
want to fit in. You want to have people who like what you're saying and like-minded people around you. So,
we're trying hard to stay away from that, and we are committed to have no drama mama llamas and all that
yep.
stuff here. And you all are proof of that. And yeah, and Meg, you're right. Verbal fights can hurt worse than the physical. The thing with verbal fights is that they can mentally and emotionally really take a toll on somebody.
Permanent scars.
The physical fights, the scars heal and scab over, but the mental and the emotional, it can take a while to shake that stuff off. And the thing is sometimes we internalize that. We take what other people say about us and we believe that it's true. Somebody tells us we're not worthwhile, we're not worthy, that nobody will love us. That we take that stuff in and we believe that crap, and yet there's no proof to it. There's no proof. Prove I'm not worthy. Prove I'm not lovable. Well, they can't, but somehow it gets stuck like an earworm in our head, and we believe that ish. So, yeah, you're right. The verbal stuff can always do it. And HBR, you just cracked me up. You cracked me up. Trina, oh my gosh, Trina. Oh, I just don't
I
know
knew
what to
she came for
say.
you. I already welcomed her too with open arms. So,
Yep, I haven't seen Trina in forever. And Dustin, yeah, guardian angels, can be anybody. And you know, I I also think, this whole thing with this group, this family, this channel, I think that there can be I have what I call earth angels. Now that may sound weird, but by
no,
now by now you're already learning that I'm weird, right? Right? I own my weirdness.
she does.
So I'm weird. I know it. I own it. Um, but but the reality is that I think there's earth angels among us too. And I think a lot of them are right here in this chat. And, we support each other. Today, just talking about fair fighting and learning about each other, and some of your ideas about fair fighting. I'd like to know from chat, are there things that you guys have used in fair fighting that have helped you um, to have fair fights? I know that for me, I learn more from my mistakes than I do my successes, and I make at least pretty much 400 mistakes a day, give or take. So, what have you guys learned that, oh, thank you, Kelly. Yeah, I'm pretty wonderfully weird. I don't know about the wonderful, but I'm definitely weird. Um, but what if you guys do? What do you do that, thank you, Kata. What do you do? Okay, so like no name calling. Thank you. Yes, no name calling. Bingo. Because isn't it easy to start throwing out those names, right?
And you know what? No failures. Nothing that was a failure in the past, holding it against or using a mistake that they didn't live up to something or a broken promise that was beyond them to use against them too.
Good one. That's a good one. Yeah, nothing about failures, nothing about being less than, nothing about you'll never amount to anything. Yeah, definitely no name calling. You piece of slime from the bottom of a snail slug's butt. Yeah, no.
Yep. No using kids against a partner or other people, parents, any kind of friend or family against that person.
Oh, good one. Good one. Yeah, no using kids, grandkids, and pets, Oh, yeah, don't no using anything like that. Don't weaponize things that are dear to somebody else. No,
Or
no, no.
fake pregnancies, saying that you're pregnant to try to trap somebody and keep them and fight so that they have to stop the fighting. Like, oh, I'm pregnant with your child. You can't attack me. Or, you know,
Oh,
I pay
oh,
your bills. Or, what happened if I took all the money and I leave you? That kind of stuff.
oh my gosh, yes, the I pay your bills. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yep.
The I pay your bills, or
I make more money.
oh, I was
Yep.
just gonna say, you just look at this, people. She's finishing my sentences. She's. It's like she's my YouTube spouse here. Yes, the who makes the most money. Yeah, yeah. That's dirt. That's definitely unfair, dirty fighting. And why do people
Yep.
do that? Why do y'all think people do that?
To make somebody feel less than. That's to win
Oh
the upper hand in the argument.
yeah, and it's because they know, up, I can get. Remember, I said before, like, people, our greatest strengths are also our greatest weaknesses. So if somebody knows you love your child more than anything on the face of the earth, or your
Yep.
pets, or anything like that, they're going to
It's your
go for that
trigger.
thing that they know is going to trigger you. They're going to go for
Yep.
that they know you love the most. Yeah, Sicilian jealousy.
But
And
don't
and
forget too, sometimes they'd use it because they know you could do better. So they try to keep you down so that you don't realize your self worth to get out there. It's just another tactic of dirty fighting.
oh yeah, if I put you down, and if I make you feel less than, and if I make you question your self-worth, then you're stuck with me.
Yep.
Now,
Because I'm the best you're going to get.
oh, and I bet some people, haven't we all probably heard that? I'm the best you'll ever have, baby. Nobody else is going to want you.
Yep.
And that's something that a lot of people in abusive relationships hear.
Which is
Nobody else
another
is.
topic.
Isn't it though, man? Are we keeping a list of these topics? Nobody else is
We
going to want
discussed this
you.
already, this one. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody else is going to want you. And that's another one of those earworms. People hear it and they
It-
believe it. That's why people stay in abusive relationships,
yep.
because they think nobody else will want them, which is totally false. And it also causes people to question their worth, which is the worst thing of all. They question their own worth.
Now, have
And
you
yeah,
ever noticed people using guilt in a fight to make a person feel guilty that they have to go to work, or they had to give time to a sick child, or that uh, they didn't get to go out and pick you up to go out on the date that they promised you? That kind of dirty fighting too, to use guilt as the upper hand.
oh yeah, yeah. And in fact, what's I think sometimes the other piece of that is other people feel guilty, so they also throw that back. And I'll give you an example. This happened with my own family over caregiving. I was the caregiver for my mother who was dying of cancer because she lived with me. My sisters both lived out of state, but they turned their anger, their guilt into anger toward me. And I kept thinking, why in the hell, pardon my language, why in the hell are they so pissed at me for things that are like not even related to stuff? Why are they suddenly angry for me? Angry at me. I'm taking care of our mom. And counselor here
Yeah.
couldn't figure it out, but people outside of it, my friends were saying, did you ever stop to think that they're feeling guilty that they're not there helping you? And I'm like, oh, well, then why are they pissed at me? Because they're guilty, and it's easier for them to be angry at you than it is to admit their own guilt.
Or
They
they're
may,
jealous because, or hurt that they wish they could do more and be there, and they're missing out on so much themselves, that their guilt, not so much even anger at not they, or their guilt that they know they didn't help you and they should, but wanting to and can't. That's a
yes,
big factor too.
yes. And then somebody pointed out, well, Mel, you're getting thanks for helping your mom, and they're not doing anything, even when they could come down for like a week, but they're making excuses. And so, and I was kind of like, oh, crap, I never thought about that. So, yeah, it was kind of like a huge, like, poof,
Yep.
brain brain thing there. But
Get upside your
yeah.
head verbally.
Yeah. Trina, going back to what you said, being open to forgiveness is important and losing the expectation of perfection in others. None of us are perfect and we all make mistakes. Bingo. Um, yeah, how many of us, this kind of goes back to the beginning of any relationship, and even parents with their kids. I mean, they want to be the perfect parent. And when we go into a relationship, we want it to be a perfect relationship. We want to be the perfect neighbor, we want to be the perfect everything, right? And then
Yep.
we kind of expect that from other people too. And when we're not perfect and when other people aren't perfect, that disillusion sort of sets over us, and we're kind of like, oh, is this all it is? Or oh, I thought it was going to be different, or I thought I was going to be different, or I thought they were going to be different. And forgiveness is huge. It's huge in fair fighting. Like Laurie said, sometimes we have to just kind of realize that there might not be a winner chicken dinner. There might not, it might be a draw. What wasn't there? Didn't there used to be a game show like win, lose, or draw? And maybe
Yes.
that's where you drew something.
Whammies.
Yeah, but
It
the
was win
concept,
little, yeah, the win lose or
yeah,
draw. Yep.
the concept might be that it's a draw. Nobody
Yep.
wins. You
But you
both
both
go,
have to be heard. And so
yeah.
in a way you both win. So there
Oh, I
really
like
there's
that.
as yeah, you're always going to be a winner as long as you're open and you listen to the other person's feelings and sides, and don't throw shade or dirt at them, or just be willing to listen, and you still win because the argument's done and you didn't have to go dirty, and yet you let them be heard, whether they're right or wrong. They got to be heard. They felt a fight starts because one person feels like they were wronged. Always. There's always going to be where somebody felt that they're wronged in that relationship. And sometimes just letting that other person say it, you just became the winner right there by listening.
I like that, and I think what you said just before that is spot on. That both people win. It becomes win-win because both people were heard. There may not have been what society or what anybody would say was like a clear winner,
Yep.
but the real winner is that both people were heard.
Yep. And you're
And
not
I
worried about what outside people say, because if this relationship means something to you, it doesn't matter what other people do. You've got to do what works, because if it matters that much to you, you want to hang on to it, and without strangling it, but you want to hold on to it the best way you can, the most healthiest way, and emotionally and mentally and spiritually that you can. That's what binds that relationship. And the fighting is good because you get your feelings out there instead of letting them bottle up to the point where you just think it's this person's all bad, they never listen. But if you don't talk, you don't fight, they don't hear you.
Exactly. And that's why this whole concept of fighting and fair fighting is so important because when people don't talk, when they just let it bottle up, sooner or later, I mean, think about it. We've all had that pot on the stove that's boiled over and made a mess. You know,
Or
if you
burnt dinner.
yeah, which is why I don't cook. Um, if we keep throwing stuff in the pot, you keep throwing crap in the pot, expecting, oh, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. Sooner or later, it boils over, folks. It's inevitable. So when you deal with stuff, instead of just letting it slide, letting it slide, letting it slide, you deal with it as it comes along. Okay, don't keep putting it off for someday. Here's two reasons. One is that, sorry, one of my dogs is kind of grunchy. Okay, here comes the squirt bottle. Squirt, squirt. Squirt bottles for dogs.
That's why I'm muting mine. They're
Squirt bottles and dogs are wonderful. Um, so if you let it build up, it builds up to the point where it takes on a life of its own. We've already decided that that's too, that's not good. The other thing is, and this is a sobering thought, and particularly with what we've gone through with the pandemic, particularly with what a lot of you have gone through with losing folks in wars and other illnesses. I want you to think about this. Even for
long time
somebody,
absences.
yeah, long time absences. I want you to think about this. Even for the people in your life that you don't particularly care for. What if someday never comes? What if that day never comes to have that discussion, to have that argument, to say you're sorry, to say, hey man, I don't agree with you, but let's just let bygones be bygones. Let's agree to disagree. Would you rather have been kind than right? Would you rather have had that discussion and let it go? As I get older, I know a lot of you are much, 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 much younger than I am, but um, that's that's just something that starts to weigh heavier on me as I get older. And what Mike's Carholder said is, when we forgive, we also have to let go as well. And that's true. We may not forget, but we just can't let it continue to eat on us because, every year that I get the honor of having another trip around the sun, I don't know if that's going to be my last one or not. I can't
Yep.
do anything about the past. I don't have a clue if I'm going to have how much longer of a future I'm going to have. The only thing I have is like right now. That's it. So you know, if I keep saying someday, 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 well, I don't know if I'm going to get a someday. So,
I just had to do that myself. I reached out to a couple people on IG. Um, I just let them know that during the bad times, I apologize if I said anything, and I let them know why I said and felt what I said. A couple responded back and said the same thing, and we actually can talk now. Not we're going to probably be best of friends, but at least that resentment and that anger is gone. Just like another one talking that doesn't know us, but just believed, reached out, they apologized, and doesn't have to be friends, but it's settled. And yeah, I'm learning that sometimes, as we get older, we don't guaranteed tomorrow is never guaranteed. And, I want to have less stress and anger so that I can give those of my family here that are all the love, and my husband and my grandkids and stuff. all of me to the best without that anger just festering, because it does. Your relationships with outside people do affect your fighting and with other people too, if you don't learn how to separate it and let it go.
Beautifully said, Lori. And there goes back to what we can control. We can control how much of our energy we put into things. And I can either put in a crap load ton of energy into people that I don't know and I don't care about and let them take a crap load ton of energy out of me, or I can put that energy into people that I love and care about and into people that I want to get to know and that I care about. And that includes people on this channel. You know, you and
Yep.
I are doing this because we have a cause and we care and we want to share that with people. I've never met anybody in this chat, but I feel like you and some of these people, and probably sooner or later all these people, it's like family.
Yep.
And I want to put, and I know you do, we want to put our energy, some of our energy into this. I don't want to put my
Yep.
energy into people that are wanting to drain me. I don't want to put my energy into people and things that are wanting to take away from me. Now, I'm not meaning that in the sense that I want to get things from people, but
No.
I, I want to enrich the lives of others and bless them if I can. Um, and what you said was just so beautiful. You know, it's like when we give to others, we get without even trying. You know.
I can tell you that there's quite a few people in here that had my back that I didn't even know it. And they watched and they didn't judge. And when they put it all together, they let me know. And I also got some good advice from another friend. And he said, do you want their respect? Do you need their respect of what or their opinion of you? And when you realize no, then you only are going to respect the ones and work on relationships of those that you want their respect and their opinion of you matters.
Oh, isn't that cool? That's wonderful. And that's the key, is that it's mutual. You know, we care about the people who are here. You know, if two people had shown up, we'd care about those two people. I don't even know how many people are in chat. I'm embarrassed to say because I'm just rolling along and not.
That's I'm not watching the numbers, but they're not bad. I could just tell you that we've
Yeah,
been doing.
it's like whether it's 2 or 20 or 200.
That's right.
But the thing is that you and I care about the people that are here, and I know they care about each other because they're here.
Yep.
And so it's like, yeah, it's like Marcus is saying, haters are always going to hate, and they don't always understand why, and they just want to be clowns all day, every day. Marcus, you're right. The haters sometimes don't even know why they're hating. They just be hating.
Yep.
It's like it's a sport for them. And when you take that back to fair fighting, there are people who fight and they don't even know why they fight. Sometimes my belief and what I've found in my practice was that there are people who are sometimes so genuinely unhappy that they just kind of either don't know how else to function, or they just sort of spread the misery.
Yep. Or they
And
want to be a part of something, but they don't know or aren't willing to look at self-reflecting that maybe the attacks or their approach just leaves others so cold that nobody wants nothing to do with them. So
yeah,
maybe, and if you say past is past and you made amends, you don't keep throwing up those amends in everybody's faces. You've got to let stuff go if you wanted to be a part of something, because the reason why the community is so strong is a lot of people know each other in real life. These aren't just
right.
people we call family. A lot of people have known each other. They talk in real life. They've met each other in real life. And those bonds are real. And to let somebody else in, if they're just going to attack, that's, there's that wall. And that's just like fighting with your partner. You can't have a wall, but you can't be attacked without that. You've got to, people build walls because of attacks.
Yeah. That's
So,
cool that there are people that know each other. Well, and there's something about the here. Here's the thing about walls and fair fighting. You know, it's kind of like in fear fighting, yeah, you kind of have to protect yourself, but at some point you have to let those walls down a little bit because
Yep.
of two things. If you don't let the good things in. And, walls are built to keep the bad things out, but two things can happen when those walls are built too strong. People stay locked inside with their own bad stuff, and it just turns around inside, and they can't let their own bad stuff out. And they also can't let the good in. And so it's
Yep.
important to at least start letting some of the bricks of those walls down. And and the other thing is with fair fighting, and when people are in relationships and learning to communicate, when they're learning how to listen to each other, and when they're learning to communicate in a way that resonates with the other person, that's just it. We have to be willing to learn. And it's hard. It's hard as we get older to kind of say, "Oh, I don't know it all," and that this old dog,
Learns a new trick every day.
yeah,
Wouldn't
I
you
know.
agree, though, as a counselor with those walls, though, that if you take your time and you're learning about somebody, that beginning of a relationship is where your walls are starting to come down so that more and more you're letting that person into that circle. Because if you don't let your wall down, do you really have a real relationship? If that person doesn't know all of you, I mean, it's okay to have your personal secrets, little things that you want to show them down the road. You don't want to give everything away at the first date, but you slowly through that dating period and that newlywed period, well, not even newlywed, because if once you're married, you've already let that person in, so that those walls should be down for that person. So wouldn't you agree that the walls, that's what, before you get into a relationship with that person, why wouldn't you have your walls down at least halfway so that they were able to come in?
Yeah, that was actually those were words that I used as I started falling for my boyfriend. I told him, I mean, I told him I had built walls up after my last relationship, and to protect myself. And one
Yeah.
of the things I told him as we progressed was that he was slowly taking those walls down. And I didn't want to hold him responsible for what somebody else had built up. I was the one who built the walls actually.
Yeah.
But it was important for me to let him know that, yeah, because of how we were interacting, and because of who I was with him and how I felt comfortable, and because of our communication, that he was allowing me to take my walls down, and that felt good. And um, it really was the success for why we became a couple, was because I could take those walls down and just be me. And it's an amazing feeling. And this may sound strange to probably particularly some of the younger people that are in the chat and that are listening, but when you're kind of in that fourth quarter of your life, sometimes, and even having had a relationship, like when my last relationship ended right at the beginning of the pandemic. Great timing, right?
Yeah.
Um, it was like the trifecta, folks. I mean, true story. And I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I look back on it now and it's really funny. It was like I was having medical problems. I was in a job that was kind of killing me because I was both clinical and administrative where I was working. Um, really, really high stress. And I didn't know a pandemic was coming. I mean, everybody raise your hand if you knew a pandemic was coming. I didn't. Um, and my relationship was like hitting the rocks. I'd been in that relationship like a year and a half, and with somebody else who was in my profession, but not. I didn't work with them. So it was like the trifecta. It's like a relationship ended, medical issues, and I had to take a medical leave, and then wound up going on medical retirement, leaving my job. And then the pandemic started. Like, who saw that coming? Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And then because of my medical issues and the pandemic, my doctor said pretty much, girlfriend, you need to like do serious quarantining. Like if you don't, because if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, those variants of COVID were like, and for somebody that had the issues that I had, it would not, she told me, it will not end well for you. So I was
Right.
like, well, holy heck, I guess the dogs and I are just going to be spending a lot of time at home, which we did. So for the better part of 2 years, I was like, oh, me and my dogs, which is just added to my crazy. Okay, people. So there you have it. It just added to my crazy. The truth is out. Um, so yeah. So it was me, myself, and my dogs. And so when I met my current boyfriend, it was like not only had my walls been built up, but they had been cemented shut during the pandemic. And you learn a lot about yourself. I mean, I went to counseling. I did virtual counseling during the pandemic because I had to like get some serious ish straightened out. And best thing I ever did. And I also started, when you've worked as a counselor for 32 years and your career comes to an abrupt halt and you feel like you've kind of lost your purpose, I was like, okay, what do I do now? So I started writing, which has been my lifelong love. So good things came out of that. But yeah, you have to really be introspective. You have to really, when I met him, I had to really talk to him and we had to really, he's a widower. So we had to really be open and honest. And sorry, I started rambling there, but it's just, you have to be honest and you have to be willing, like you said, take those bricks out of the wall and communicate. And I'd be lying if I said we never fight. We've had very few fights, and I will attribute that to really open communication. But we're still learning how to fair fight because for anybody who's been in different relationships, fair fighting looks different in different
With each person.
relationships.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Like we're still trying to figure out. Like he doesn't like confrontation, so he'll kind of go dark and get quiet because kind of like Mike's Carhole said earlier, he needs some time to process.
And then there's people who are quick to anger and some that are slow boilers. So it might not be angry at the same time. So where one's hot and comes in, the other one's like, I don't understand what's going on. But as the fight's going on, they escalate. And then you've got to, yeah, it's just, there's so many different tools for fair fighting. But wouldn't you recommend also, a lot of people think counseling is for the end of a marriage, but it's good also for some people that have communication issues for themselves and they know it. Start with couples counseling even in the beginning to counsel. And if you can't put out what you want or expect in from a partner, maybe the help of a counselor can help put out what you need to say.
Oh yeah, or even don't even have to be in a relationship. Um, Sometimes people think counseling they equate it with being unhealthy
Or
and
crazy.
or crazy. Yeah,
Yep.
it doesn't have to be for any of those things. I mean, there are people who go to premarital counseling. There are people who go to counseling when they just start dating, just to try to not, muck things up. There are people who I can remember the very first time somebody came to me for counseling that I thought like didn't quote need counseling. I was confused. I was like, because we do these like checklists, like, are they depressed, anxious? Are they having trouble at work or school with relationships, whatever? And it was like, none of the above. And she just checked other. And I was like, kind of like, why are you here?
And it doesn't even have to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist. It could be your priest. It could
Right.
be a community leader. It could be a best friend that you just, you go to for advice or a sounding board, and you trust that person's opinion so that you self-reflect yourself too.
Right. Well, and it turned out that this young woman actually was. she had just graduated with her bachelor's degree. She she was really well adjusted. She wasn't looking for career counseling or anything else. She really just wanted to kind of have a sounding board, and just she was new to the community, so she didn't have family like right near her. And he just kind of wanted to talk about life plans and just kind of wanted to see if she was sort of on the right track. And it doesn't have to be about dysfunction. I think that's what people don't maybe get about counseling. I mean, she taught me something. She taught me that, it doesn't have to be about dysfunction. And you can go to counseling by yourself. You can learn about fair fighting by yourself. Um, as a counselor, my role has never been to cure or to solve people's problems. It's been
No.
about it's been about giving people the tools to fix things themselves. And
And to hear them out, an opportunity for somebody neutral to hear both sides.
right.
And sometimes they feel comfortable airing out their business to a stranger. Some are looking to be proven that they're right, but that's not always the case. So welcome, Adrian and Jesse. We're glad you came.
Hey, welcome everybody. Yeah, it's never I mean, I would never be the one to say you're right, you're wrong. Now there would be
No.
times I would point out the benefits maybe of one person's approach, or whatever. Or I would kind of get them themselves to say, well, how do you think that might work better than this? Or how does that help you, and how does that help you? But they'd come to their own conclusions. And essentially what I'd say is, look, I'm going to give you some tools to put in a toolbox. If you never take them out and use them, okay, oh well. But if you take them out and use them, then maybe it'll help. It would be like Mike's car hole. He's got tools that he uses to work on vehicles. um, but if he has all those tools and he doesn't use them to work on vehicles, then he can't repair vehicles or build out vehicles. So, no counselor is going to fix anybody, period. People are going to fix their own things if they want to. And it's the same thing for fair fighting. People can learn about not calling names, not bringing up the past, using code words. Oh, that's another thing I don't think we really mentioned. That could be a code word. Like if somebody does bring up the past, or if somebody does name call, there can be like a safe word or a code word that somebody says. So
And
instead
not
of
just in the bedroom. You
right,
could use it in
right.
everyday life.
So instead of saying, you're bringing up the past again, they can agree
Yep.
on a code word ahead of time, like, and it could be something silly, like Cocoa Puffs, or I don't know,
Bananas or
bananas. Yeah. So
yep.
if somebody breaks a rule, instead of launching into anything, somebody just uses the code word. The funny thing about the code word is often that will almost always stop the argument and cause people to start cracking up because they've agreed ahead of time on the code word.
Yep.
But any of these things for fair fighting, taking a personal time out, with a time limit, and saying, okay, I'm going to take my time out, um, and I'll be back in a day or 2 days. Not like they're leaving, but we'll discuss it in 30 minutes or tomorrow or whatever. Agreeing to disagree, not having to have a winner, no name calling, no shouting, not using children, dogs, property, money making, all these other things as weapons. All the things we've discussed, these are great tools, but if people don't use them,
They're
nothing,
worthless.
they're
Yep.
worthless.
Does
Totally
anybody
worth.
have questions for me or for Mel? Because she is retired, but she still was a counselor and she does have experience in all of this. Mine's more life experience after 26 years of marriage, and she's had relationships. Yeah, you were right too, though. Divorces don't mean failures. You
Yeah,
learn something, and those are welcome experiences that you had in your life. Like my ex, I have my babies from them, but I also learned there was no cheating, there was no abuse. It's just that was that time that we found each other and we just grew apart. And it wasn't the forever person. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just look at a past relationship or a marriage as that person came into your life for a reason, gave you what you needed. You don't always have to take just the bad away from that relationship. They taught you things that you like or don't like. So carry those over into another relationship when it comes to, and your failures become your positives in your next relationship.
I love that, and I agree. And instead of us saying, "Oh, well, that was a failure or whatever,"
Yeah.
yeah, it was a learning experience.
A beginning.
It was a new beginning. I know sometimes when I was dating again after my divorce, second divorce, and I was like, "Oh, people are going to see me as like a two-time loser," and I tried to kind of turn that around and say, "Well, I'm just twice experienced,"
Yeah.
and I kind of make a joke out of it, but the reality is a lot of it is how we perceive it ourselves and how we present it. Do we see ourselves as failures because we've been divorced twice? One
No.
of my sisters was married and divorced. Well, she was married 4 times, divorced 3 times. Her last marriage has lasted 30 years. Okay, so
Yeah.
somebody might say, well, she's been married 4 times, divorced three. Okay, but this last one's, been for 30 years. So
Yeah.
maybe it was a learning curve. Maybe she got married too young, maybe whatever. But the
Maybe she
reality
had baggage that she didn't know about, or maybe he had baggage, and there's always a reason why a marriage doesn't work out, and it doesn't have to be the abuse or death or um, uh, cheating. It can just be that one person wasn't emotionally invested enough or wasn't mature enough to handle it at that point or didn't understand themselves enough to give what they needed to that other person or vice versa.
right.
And
And I
so
will
each
say,
time,
yeah, I will say, unfortunately, the first person she married had undiagnosed mental illness and would not get treatment, and it was unfortunate. But he was still a human being, and I think though that she learned and she grew with each experience, and the fourth time she got it right, and
yep,
they've wound up in a 30-year marriage and done well. I think it's how we look at our own experiences. If we call ourselves failure and if we call our experiences failures, then we're doing that to ourselves. If we can, we do what we call reframing. It's kind of like if you think of taking a photo out of or a painting out of one frame and putting it in another one. Okay, I'm going to take this out of an ugly frame and put it in a nice frame. Um, you reframe it so that it looks different. You look at it differently, and if you look at it as a learning experience, and if you look at it as, okay, can I come away from this and say, what did I learn? Was there something positive from it? My marriages were not all disasters. They were wonderful things. My first marriage was to my first love, and you know, oh my gosh, I could say a billion more good things that I could bad. My second marriage, from that, I have two stepdaughters and step grandchildren. And while I don't see them, only one of them I see, and while I'm not close, they're still wonderful things. So I think we I think human beings are sometimes we default to the negative, or we're kind of pushed to see the negative, and instead we need to look at what was good about that. What can I take away from that was good and that was right and that helped me to learn and to grow. And that's true for any of our mistakes. That's true for the fights. That's true for the arguments. What's something positive from that I won't repeat again? What's something that will help me in the future? And if we go into it like that, then I think we'll be okay.
mine was a stepping stone that led me to the actual rock that I got,
uh,
that safety rock. Because you can
I
sit
love
on a
it.
rock, you can depend on a rock to not move, a rock to not leave, but a stone, you could toss it in a creek that floats away. It's unstable. You can't stand on a stone and for support in a moving water, but you can always depend on that heavy boulder. So I use
That's
mine as the
beautiful.
stone that led me to my rock.
That's beautiful. There's a song by Rascal Flatts, God bless the broken road that led me straight to you.
Yeah.
And that's what I think of sometimes about, I had to follow this broken road. Life can be a broken road, but ultimately it led me to, people in my life. 12 years ago, I was engaged to a wonderful man who unfortunately died of kidney cancer. We met and we were engaged. I was with him for 2 years. Unfortunately, he died of kidney cancer. Um, I didn't date for a long, long time after that, and then my mom got cancer. Then I got breast cancer. Then my mom died of cancer. It was just like, cancer are us, and so life was disrupted for a while. But you know, life life kept going, and I'm still here for a reason. And so, I just kind of look back on that. There's a broken road that's led me to other things, and like I said, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but I'm still here today, and
Yeah.
I'm here with you, and I'm here with this awesome group, and I'm jealous that Mike's Carhole is baking a brownie cake. Oh my
Hmm.
God.
And for those, I mean, okay, Marcus, for your situation, she's the only one who can help herself. She's an adult, and if she doesn't want to stop and she doesn't want to help, you guys are just going to build up that poison and that resentment and that anger inside of yourselves. If she doesn't want help and she won't let you help, you've got to wait till she's willing. Don't let that consume you. And Vicky, that is so easy for you if that's in your position, is find somebody that you could talk to outside the family. They have, and you could do it through the internet, you could do it through the phone, or you could go in person. There's so many people that would help you. And there's also, that there's groups like AA and stuff like, they actually have grieving groups that meet in churches and in community centers. Check out your city and see if there isn't uh, groups where people go, meetings for grieving people who are grieving.
Yes, and I'd like to speak to both of those too. Marcus, there is a group that you can find, and I don't know if you're in the US or Canada or where you are, but there is a group called Al Anon, which is for family members and friends of people who have loved ones that are actively drinking that won't stop. I went to Al Anon for years because of my dad's drinking. And it was a great way for me to find support because of the fact that, he was drinking, and I felt kind of helpless myself. In some states, there are ways that concerned people can petition the court. It's not a Baker Act. Here in Florida, there's something called the Marchman Act, where you can petition the court to have someone evaluated. It's not a Baker Act. It's not where they're sent for a hold or anything like that. It's just where they're assessed, usually on an outpatient basis. But like Laurie said, and again, I can say this having been a substance abuse counselor, which was actually one of my specialties for over 3 decades. Unless and until somebody is willing to stop their use of substances, um, you know, you can lead a horse to water.
Water. Yeah.
Can't make them drink, and you can't make somebody stop drinking or using substances. I understand how helpless a feeling that can be because of not only my dad's alcohol use, but other family members with their alcohol use. And I have a half sister who has an addiction to opioids and to benzodiazepines, and it's a very helpless feeling watching somebody throw their lives away. Now, my half sister has been in treatment before. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to last for very long because she doesn't follow up with aftercare. And for a lot of people with substance abuse issues, it can take multiple treatment episodes. And the key usually is maintaining outpatient treatment and support groups through AA, through NA, through smart treatment. There's a non 12-step based aftercare called groups called SMART for people that don't want to do 12-step based support. So there are things they can do, but if they choose not to do them, it's very helpless.
Mm.
So I would suggest Maybe also just you attending Al-Anon and getting some support that way.
So your
Victoria,
relationships stay healthy for your, especially like if you're dating somebody and they like a couple glasses of wine or a beer here and now, you might transfer what you're going through with a family member onto that relationship. And
yeah,
that wouldn't be a fair fight either for that person. So yeah, it's
right.
probably better for your own mental health and
Yeah,
other
definitely.
family members to go to these meetings and see that it's not your fault.
Definitely. And Victoria, definitely. If you look up counselors in your area, if you go to like Psychology Today or and again, I don't know what country you're in or state,
America.
America. Okay, if you go to Psychology Today, most counselors will list their specialties, and many of them will list whether or not they do grief counseling. Grief counseling was also another one of my specialties. Also, most hospices in each state, whether you've used their hospice services or not, they will
Offer
have
it.
bereavement or support groups. So you could check into different hospices in your area to see if they have hospice or support groups, and they're free. So I would strongly recommend that. I
Which we will be touching on this subject on another
Yeah,
day for sure for
I've
everybody.
also been involved in some support groups that I attended for my own benefit, as well as leading them. So, again, I mean, I hope if nothing else, one of the things you hear from me as a counselor,
Retired counselor.
a
Yep.
retired counselor, is that I've also I believe in my profession, and that I've also gone to individual counseling, I've gone to couples counseling, and that I've gone to bereavement counseling, I've gone to Al-Anon. I've done things because I believe in the profession and that I know getting help and support is important. So I hope you hear that I practice what I preach. And MMC, you're right. Folks don't know how to look for the good sometimes in bad situations, and it's really important. One of the things that always strikes me from a lot of people, like if you listen on the news, like after a hurricane, a tornado, an earthquake, a flood, a mudslide, in Florida here, the hurricanes and stuff. People go back and there's nothing left from their house. They've lost everything, and I'm just always amazed when people say, but we have our lives, we have our pets,
Yep.
we'll rebuild. And I'm like, these are the people who have lost everything, but they still see good in a bad situation.
Because
You know,
it's those bad situations that make us see what is really important for us. I'll tell you, roof being blown off our house, it was nothing. Going without power for 10 days in the middle of summer with back to back. We still had each other and our family on here that because Tim went live even you know, they were there supporting us, offering all
yeah,
kinds of help, donating to the Red Cross to help our area, um, everything. So, yeah, there you got to look at the good over what matters most to you, and especially with fair fighting being the topic. Um, does that person matter to you? And if that person is your person, you do what it takes to learn. Even if you don't always know all the tools to make a fair fight, but there's so many resources today that there's no excuse not to try to figure out what works, even if it's just communication.
absolutely. And it's times like those that and times like the ones we live in where you put things in perspective. And Laura, you said it so beautifully. If that person or those people are important to you, you find a way. And when times really get tough, when your roof is blown off your house, or when somebody's home is destroyed, or whatever, and when you've lost it all, you know, it's like, what is really freaking important, you know? And the things often that people fight about, really, people, when you get down to it, is it that important? Is it a matter of life and death? And I'll go back to that example of, will it be important in 5 hours, in 5 days, in 5 weeks,
Yep.
in 5 months? And most of the time people can say, nope. Now
Yep.
sometimes maybe it can be. Maybe it's about issues that really will impact a friendship or relationship, down the road. But I could guarantee you, probably pretty much 80% of the time or more, it's the little stuff that we let get in our heads and in our way. And
Yeah.
Mike, you're right. Mental health is something we need to be more open to talking about, because it's it isn't really about mental illness. It's about mental health. It's
Yeah.
just about like physical health, and we need to normalize that. And I'm going to put out there that, if people you know if people need to talk, I'm happy to be available.
And
There's
wasn't that what you want to discuss next show too, so that people who have questions and they want to talk, it's going to be an open panel where people can come up and do one-on-one talking with you or ask their questions in the chat. Because you also need mental health for a stable relationship too, whether it's just
abs-
dating or a relationship or a friendship.
Absolutely. We look forward to opening up the panel in future shows. We want
Yep.
ideas. Send us ideas. Send Lori, ideas. Send me ideas for future shows. Um, we hope that this one has been beneficial and enjoyable. We hope that you see that it's no drama. It's keeping it real. It's keeping it positive. It's real people. It's real talk. It's what we said it was going to be. We hope that we can insert some fun in there. And this is your show. It's not our show. And
Well,
gosh, I can't.
I'm so thankful for everybody who's come out and supporting us with our first show so far, because it usually relationships and mental health and the subjects we want to talk about are scary for people to actually listen to. Yes. So,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. There's numbers like 988. For veterans, remember that legislation's just been passed, and that there's more help than ever now for veterans, including free transportation, free care. Uh, it's opening up. Also, no matter where you live, to be able to dial a number to get help, and uh, and also to go online. There are free resources. Counseling doesn't have to be costly, and just to be able to call a number and get help. United Way usually has a number as well. In many areas, it's 211.
United Healthcare, and you don't have to, if you're a veteran, go to the VA anymore, because our amazing ex-president made it set up where you can go outside and ask for those referrals to see a doctor outside, so that
That's
that stigma, if you're worried about somebody knowing, even whether you're active duty or not.
That's
So,
right. You can access community care. So just keep in mind that we're going to be back every other Wednesday at Laurie's World on Straight Talk with Laurie and Mel. We're going to be keeping it real with real talk, real people, real fun, and just cannot wait to have you all back. Share the link and invite more people. And I hope today has been as much fun, Laurie, for you and for the chat as it has been for me. I've loved it.
oh, I did too. And like well, we knew we were going to banter off each other pretty good, but I am just grateful that everybody was interested enough to come out and check it out, show support, and actually found it as interesting as what we did, because everything we've talked about, people have been touching on for future shows too, that we've talked about, that we just think it's important information. It doesn't always have to just be fun or fighting and angry or this or that or music. It could be this kind of topics too, to help people out. It's been months in
Absolutely.
the working, because with you being sick and with the schedules and the holidays, it's taken us a while to get here, but I'm so happy that we're finally here.
Me too. So everybody keep it real, stay real people, keep real fun, keep moving forward, and keep coming back for Straight Talk.
And love yourself, first of all, because you can't love somebody else in a relationship if you don't love yourself first.
Amen. Take care,
So,
everybody. See you in 2 weeks.
yeah, everybody, thank you for coming out. You know the deal. Stay safe, stay blessed, and we will see you on the next one.